Okay, if you're watching this video, it means that you've decided to choose this question for your assessment tomorrow. How does Doyle explore Victorian expectations in The Man with the Twisted Lip? Remember, there are two options. One is Sherlock Holmes, the other one is Victorian expectations. If this is the question that you want to do, you're on the right lesson. If it's not, go back and check the Share My Homework post and click on the alternative lesson for today. So I'm going to talk you through, now you've made your decision of what question you're going to do, you need to do some really purposeful planning so that you're ready for their assessment tomorrow and you know exactly what you're going to write in that form assessment. So first thing you need to do once you've picked your question is figure out your argument. Now, if you've chosen this question, it's probably because you've already got a little bit of a sense of your argument. You've chosen it because it's a little bit more open-ended and you can decide exactly what to write about. It's not as limited as the other question. But that can actually be a bit intimidating as well because there's so many options. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to figure out your argument, and you're going to draft that argument on this section. So the questions and tasks just below the video are really designed to get you to structure that argument, and that's the last thing you're going to do. So first thing is, what on earth are you going to write about? What expectations are there? Well, you need to think, what does expectation actually mean? What are Victorian expectations? And then you need to write a list of the different possibilities. I've given you some suggestions here, not all of them. I've suggested that you could talk about the expectations of gentlemen and the expectations of women. So expectation of gentlemen could be the expectations versus the reality, the secret lives of Victorian men, the superficial facade, the kind of hypocritical behaviours of Victorian gentlemen. That's what my model essay was about that I looked at last week with you. Expectation of women, you can talk about Mrs. St. Clair, Kate Whitney, Watson's wife is also referred to as three female characters in this story. A lot of you wrote really well about Irene Adler in the previous story and Helen Stoner. You can make reference to those characters, even though you need to focus on the story, you can make reference to them, and it will be worth thinking about the interesting similarities and differences. That's your focus. Expectations of class, and then crime and prejudice. These probably kind of link together. So what people expected of a gentleman versus what prejudices people had of the working class, and how that's kind of blended in this story, because we've got Neville St. Clair, who on the surface is a gentleman and looking deeper is deeply flawed and pretending to be a homeless person to make money. You could talk about the police force and the rise in the development of the police force at this time and how Doyle's kind of dealing with that. The Victorian expectations of what a police force could do versus what Sherlock Holmes can do. And you could make, if you wanted to, really direct reference to the Victorian fin de siècle, the turn of the century, and the fact that this was a time of innovation and change, and the expectations of change and innovation and excitement and new sort of revelations, and how that links to Sherlock himself. Loads of options below. Write the list, decide on what you're going to talk about. Then, once you've done that, you need to think, right, okay, I know which focus I'm going to have. I need to be really specific about the context linked to that. I need my facts and details, because if you're going to talk about women, you have to talk about the angel in the house. If you're going to talk about the superficial facade, you need to use words like hypocrisy, paradox, talk about William Gladstone. You need the very specific contextual links, and you need the moments in the story where those things are demonstrated. And then you're going to come up with your full argument. This is the one from the model answer that I showed you last week. It is 4 sentences. An argument does not need to be very long, but it needs to be really clear. What's your essay going to be about? In mine, it's reputation, status, and gentlemen. What are you going to focus on? Well, you're going to focus on Sherlock's character seeking truth and justice versus the flawed male characters, and you need to get your intentions in there, your writer's intention. So Doyle appears to mirror the ugly reality. Doyle appears to cast a critical spotlight on the truth. So that's what your argument should look like. You're going to draft that down below, and then we're going to look for some evidence together. Good luck. Really struggling to put that together. I've got some sentence starters here. I don't love sentence tasks. I think sometimes it reduces you, it makes you feel a bit trapped. But if you're struggling to word it or articulate it, these are absolutely fine to use. I'd suggest you start with the what. In The Man with the Twisted Lip, Doyle presents expectations about, Doyle presents ideas about, Doyle chooses to focus on. That's when you put your gender, class, police force, etc. During the text, a reader might think that. So what's the kind of overall impression you would have of that? And then focus on the context and the why at the end. Interestingly, Doyle seems to mirror his Victorian context by Doyle seems to be using the female characters to question. Doyle seems to be using his flawed gentleman characters to mock, etc. So have a go at using these if you're really struggling to put that argument together.